What's up everyone? Today we're back in the kitchen where we're going to learn a very easy but delicious recipe with butternut squash. Butternut squash is a great vegetable to have on a regular basis. It's really easy on the gut, has a really good amount of fiber, and it's filled with nutrients like minerals and vitamin C. Specifically, it has a lot of potassium and magnesium, which are crucial minerals for your health and your weight, especially magnesium, which has been proven to increase insulin sensitivity. But on top of that, butternut squash is delicious. It's very sweet and very comforting. And in this dish, really, we extract the flavor from butternut squash and add a little kick to it with some spices. So now let's get started. Okay guys, so in this butternut squash recipe, obviously we have our butternut squash, 1 small onion, 2 cloves of garlic, and 1 little spicy pepper. This one packs a punch. I'll put links down below for what kind of spicy pepper you can use, but this really adds a nice kick to the meal. And then on top of those ingredients, we have olive oil that we'll use for cooking. In general, I always recommend using olive oil to cook vegetables. And the reason for that is I think olive oil really extracts a lot of flavor out of vegetables. The fruitiness from the oil really helps blend well together with the vegetables. Also, olive oil cannot be really used for high heat cooking, but you're really not going to cook vegetables at high heat, so olive oil is perfect for vegetables. On top of that, it's super healthy as it is the key oil of choice in the Mediterranean diet, and it's recognized for its anti-inflammatory and fat-burning benefits. One last thing, here I have a small pot, which is what I'll use to cook the butternut squash. And very important, you must make sure you have a lid for the pot. In general, when you cook vegetables, it's really good to cook them with a lid because that's how you're going to retain the moisture from the vegetable. And that's really going to extract the most amount of flavor as well. All right, so the first step, which is probably the most annoying one, is to cut the butternut squash. You can actually buy a pre-cut butternut squash at most grocery stores. But personally, I prefer to cut it myself for freshness. If I cut it myself, it's fresher and it's going to taste better. Also, it's a little cheaper than if you buy it pre-cut, so that's up to you. So as far as cutting the butternut squash, first I start with the top here, which I remove, and I try to remove the bottom as well. And then I work around the squash to remove the skin. And that may take just a few minutes. So if you're not used to cooking, those steps might seem discouraging. I used to be the kind of guy who would buy a vegetable once in a while and leave it in the fridge until it would rot because I didn't know how to cook it. And so I really know what it's like when you're not used to cooking to feel discouraged by the amount of work that it seems that there is. But quite frankly, once you start making really delicious dishes like this and start enjoying your food and seeing the results for your health and weight, I don't think this will matter much. And if this feels like a lot now, believe me, in a couple of months, it will feel very easy. All right, so the next step once you remove the skin from the butternut squash is to just cut it in small pieces. So, I have a small recipient right here. So I just start cutting it horizontally like this. Now the thing with the butternut squash is that you do have seeds. So in the top part there's no seeds, so you can just keep cutting and you're going to be using all of it. But then once you get to the bottom, you start getting into the seed section. And as you do, you just make sure you remove the seeds. So what you want to do is when you get to the bottom is you cut it into smaller pieces like this and you go and remove the inside with all of the seeds. And now you're just left with pieces of butternut squash with nothing else other than the flesh. So once you've cut, grossly your butternut squash that way, you're going to cut them into even smaller pieces. They don't have to be too small. You want to make sure that you have chunks of butternut squash to retain a good texture for the dish. Okay, so I finished chopping the butternut squash and I added a little bit of water to the butternut squash in the container, which I'll also use to cook the butternut squash. Now all I have to do is peel the garlic. So you got to remove the skin. Now garlic, on top of adding a lot of taste to the dish, is a superfood with a lot of benefits for gut health. It's antifungal, antimicrobial, and has also been recognized for its anti-cancer benefits. Okay, so the garlic, you can just cut it in 4 pieces for each clove, however you like, but I like to have chunks of garlic. And then you have your onion, where we're going to do the exact same thing. Cut it at the top. Try to cut it at the bottom as well to remove the outside layer. Now, onions, on top of adding a ton of taste to your dish, are a great source of prebiotic, so they're really good for gut health. So when you add the butternut squash with the onion and the garlic, you have a super awesome combo for your gut. And that's really going to set you up for success in your weight loss journey, since as I've mentioned in other videos, gut health is key for insulin sensitivity and the ability for somebody to lose weight. Okay, so once I've removed the skin from the onion, I'm just going to cut it into smaller pieces. Okay, so I'm done chopping my onion. Now what we're going to do is have 1 tablespoon of olive oil that we're going to add into the pot, and we're going to start cooking that at medium-low heat and add the onions as soon as the oil is hot. Okay, so we have our pot at medium-low heat, and we're now going to add the olive oil, about 1 tablespoon. So once the olive oil is hot, you can now add your onions. And what you're going to do here is you're going to shake the onions and make them sweat. Now again, you don't want to cook at high heat. Medium low, maybe even lower if you think that the onions are burning. But you just want to get them a little yellow and give them a little color. And so you might stir like this for maybe 3-4 minutes. Okay, so then I reduce my heat to lower heat to let them sweat a little more. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes. My onions are now a little more yellow. It's time to add the spicy pepper. So I cut it into smaller pieces. Made sure I keep the seeds in there, because the seeds are what makes it very spicy. I'm going to stir a little bit. I'll add the garlic. Here we go. Once you added the garlic, you can stir for another 30 seconds maybe. And then once that's done, you can now add all of the butternut squash in the pot, with, again, a little bit of water with it. Okay, so now I added all of the butternut squash. I'm going to mix everything together and maybe raise the heat a little bit. I'm raising the heat to medium-low heat. And once I mixed everything, I'm going to add the lid on top of the dish. And we're pretty much done. At this point, all we're going to do is keep checking on this and stirring every 10 minutes maybe to make sure that all of the butternut squash is eventually going to cook. Otherwise, only the bottom will reduce. And like I said, the lid is very important here because it will retain all the moisture from the butternut squash and make sure that all the steam stays inside to cook all of the vegetable thoroughly. Okay, so as I said, every so often you're going to check on your butternut squash to make sure that it's not burning and that it's actually cooking. So when you remove the lid, you should hear the water boiling at the bottom. So make sure you give it a good stir. And if you don't see too much steam coming out of the pot, don't hesitate to add a little bit of water to help with the cooking. I'm just going to do that now. Not too much, just a little bit. Alright guys, so after adding the water, I can now see the steam coming out of the pot. And if I remove the lid, you can clearly hear and see the steam coming out. And my butternut squash is now getting mushier. So what you're going to do is probably every 10 minutes at this point, you're just going to check on this and stir every time to make sure that whatever was at the top comes at the bottom so that everything gets cooked thoroughly. And so you're probably going to do that another 3-4 times so that your butternut squash cooks for about 45 minutes. And then you'll be done. At any time during the cooking, you can add your salt and pepper. And what I'll do is I'll add the proportions of salt to butternut squash that you need in the description so that you know exactly how much salt you should put in there. Alright guys, it's been about 45 minutes. Let's see how things are looking. Our butternut squash is now almost ready. It's very mushy. You can probably leave it at low heat with the lid on for another 5-10 minutes if you would like. But it's pretty much ready. And now all we're going to do is serve it and enjoy it. So that's it guys. I've plated my breakfasts. I have 1/4 of my plate with some eggs, 1/4 of my plate with some sauerkraut, 1/4 of my plate with butternut squash, and 1/4 of my plate with the sweet potatoes. So a great meal here that will keep me satisfied throughout the day and provide a ton of nutrition, whether it's potassium, magnesium, prebiotics, probiotics, anti-inflammatory foods such as turmeric and ginger. So really here, a breakfast for the champions. Alright guys, I'll see you next time.